This is the Weeping Woman.
We'd be terribly lucky if it went without any brouhaha at all.
Well, the bomb has gone off. And it's gone off in Patrick Mccackey's face.
The fate of Picasso's Weeping Woman, stolen from Melbourne's National Gallery a week ago, is not known.
The National Gallery of Victoria's director, Patrick Mccackey, confirmed that his most prized acquisition had gone.
The alarm system had been fooled with a fake card.
The deadline set by the thieves for the destruction of the painting runs out at 10 o'clock tonight.
You ever thought about stealing it yourself?
Yes, I have. But I think everybody thinks those sort of things anyway.
Whatever they've done, if the picture is damaged or ruined in any way, then this gallery will never be able to afford another Picasso painting.
No insurance, deficient security, and no idea who the thieves are.
Responsibility for removing the painting has been claimed by a group calling itself the Australian Cultural Terrorists.
I can't imagine that anybody who had genuinely at heart the interests either of art or of art lovers could have perpetrated an action of this sort.
And threatening to destroy the painting next weekend if the demand for a bigger arts budget is not met. The value of the masterpiece has now been put at more than $2 million.
Carrying sentences of up to 10 years in jail.
We live in a Philistine nation, but a civilized city.
Today I found out I had a sack on the 2nd of August and I panicked because I was like, crap, I feel like I have something on the 2nd of August. And then I realised it was just the Picasso ransom that happened 30 years ago. Hey lads, my name is May and welcome to episode 1 of Melbourne Mystery. Today we will be discussing Australia's most infamous museum heist, the Picasso Ransom. So get comfortable, get your tea and let's begin. I'm going to make the font bigger on my laptop. December 6th, 1985. The NGV, so the National Gallery of Victoria, has paid $1.6 million for The Weeping Woman by Picasso. This is the highest Australia had paid for a painting at the time, and it was debuting at the National Gallery on this date. So Picasso painted this in 1934, I believe. He painted it in reference to his former painting Guernica. I think it was quite political, but I don't really understand that, so I'm gonna skip over the deep meaning of the painting.
In acidic green and purple, the painting portrays a woman convulsed by grief. It was painted 4 months after Picasso's most famous political work, Guernica, and it was forged from the same horrific subject matter, the infamous German attack on the ancient Basque city during the Spanish Civil War.
This is where we first meet Patrick Mccackey, who is director of NGV at the time. He was an Irish immigrant and moved to Melbourne at the age of 10. He studied fine arts and literature at the University of Melbourne. He was the art critic for The Age in 1966. He was the first professor of fine arts at Monash University in 1976, before becoming the director of NGV in 1981. And on the day of the debut, Mccackey made the statement that the Weeping Woman's face was going to haunt Melbourne for the next 100 years. August 2nd, 1986, 8 months later. It's the evening shift and the Weeping Woman by Pablo Picasso is stolen from the National Gallery of Victoria. They unscrewed the painting from the wall with a specialised specific screwdriver that was not available to the public. They neutralised the security wires attached to the picture, and they left a small card in place of the painting saying the painting had been removed for maintenance to the ACT. At this point, people believed that the thieves had very strong ties to the art world, and this was because they thought the theft was an homage to the time the Mona Lisa went missing from the Louvre in 1911, that Picasso was a suspect of. He didn't do it, but he was suspected for it. However, because they left this maintenance card in place of the painting, no one suspected a thing until 2 days later, on the 4th of August 1986. When people read that it had been sent for maintenance to the ACT, they assumed it meant the Australian Capital Territory. However, when they gave the ACT a ring and they were like, hey, have you got our painting? No, we don't have your painting. Oh, that's fine. So the painting hadn't been sent to the Australian Capital Territory, nor had it been removed for maintenance. This was when Mccackey and the Melbourne police were called to the scene. The police checked everywhere. They were crawling around in the air vents, checking behind other paintings. They even had to drain the infamous moat outside of the gallery. But the only thing they managed to turn up was the frame of the painting, which didn't have any fingerprints on it.
The frame, discarded after canvas and stretcher were removed, was examined by forensic scientists, but apparently yielded no clues.
August 5th, 1986, the next day. A ransom letter was sent to The Age addressed to then Arts Minister Race Matthews. The ransom note read as follows. Attention, Rank Matthews. We have stolen the Picasso from the National Gallery as a protest against the niggardly funding of the fine arts in this hick state and against the clumsy, unimaginative stupidity of the administration and distribution of that funding. 2 conditions must be publicly agreed upon if the painting is to be returned. Number 1, the minister must announce a commitment to increasing the funding of the arts by 10% in real terms over the next 3 years, and must agree to appoint an independent committee to inquire into the mechanics of the funding of the arts with a view to releasing money from its administration and making it available to artists. I didn't take any of that in. Number 2, the minister must announce a new annual prize for painting open to artists under 30 years of age. 5 prizes of $5,000 are to be awarded. A fund is to be established to ensure that the real value of the prizes is maintained each year. The prize is to be called the Picasso Ransom. Because the Minister of the Arts is also Minister of Plot, Grace Matthews was also Minister for the Police at the time, we are allowing him a sporting 7 days in which to try to have us arrested while he deliberates. There will be no negotiation. At the end of 7 days, if our demands have not been met, and our campaign continue. Your very humble servants, the Australian Cultural Terrorists. ACT. So they'd figured out what ACT stood for, but no one knew who they were. And who else other than to suspect the local artists in Fitzroy, but they didn't know either.
The ransom has, however, placed some of Melbourne's more radical artists under suspicion. This is Fitzroy, the inner city suburb where many of Melbourne's younger artists live, work and exhibit their wares. But in the galleries around here, it seems, no one's ever heard of the Australian Cultural Terrorists.
I would be very surprised if it was a group of artists who carried this particular manoeuvre off.
Well, it's the first time I've heard of them, so I don't know. I'm really interested to see the outcome of it and find out exactly who is behind it.
The government refused to meet any of these demands, instead offering a $50,000 reward for anyone with information. The NGV was also greatly criticised because they didn't have the painting insured. I couldn't find out if this was because of a policy or because they couldn't afford it, but either way, if the painting was damaged, they weren't getting any money back. In an attempt to increase security, the NGV removed the chairs for the security guards doing the night shift in the hopes that they would walk around more instead of sitting down.
The attendants objected to increased security measures, which meant they could no longer sit down on the job.
This, however, caused the security guards to go on strike, and they had to shut the museum for a few days because they didn't have any security. August 8th, 1986, 3 days later. They were getting closer to the deadline, and the government was still refusing to budge with the requirements. Instead, a company called McPherson's Medals offered up 2 $5,000 prizes in return for the painting.
But today came an offer which doesn't compromise the government, an offer from the Melbourne-based arts patron, engineering manufacturer McPherson's Limited.
To provide 2 art prizes of $5,000 each in 1987 for artists under 30.
At this time, they'd also put up a different painting in the place of The Weeping Woman by John Walker. And possibly my favourite detail in the case, the security guards going on strike managed to secure back 15 out of their 20 chairs.
In the meantime, gallery attendants who've been on strike since Tuesday, when their chairs were removed in a security shake-up, returned to the gallery today.
August 9th, 1986. The Age received ransom note number 2. I couldn't find the whole thing, but I do have snippets. If our demands have not been met, you will begin the long process of carrying about you the smell of kerosene and burning canvas. This was performed by a group whose first desire is to return the painting. And then they go on to call Rank Matthews a tiresome old bag of swamp gas and a pompous fathead. Like to most politicians, this really annoyed Race Matthews, and so he just doubled down and kept insisting that he would be pressing criminal charges. Mccackey, however, the deadline being that night, he was really hoping the thieves sent the letter before they saw the prizes offered by McPherson's Medals. And he was thinking hopefully that meant they wouldn't do anything to the painting.
The deadline set by the thieves for the destruction of the painting runs out at 10 o'clock tonight. Mr. Mccackey says he'll be waiting by the phone at the gallery for any news of the Weeping Woman.
August 10th, 1986. The deadline has arrived. However, nothing was said or heard, but Mccackey still had high hopes and high instincts that it would return.
Well, naturally one feels increasingly apprehensive as deadlines go by, but I still have a sort of persistent hope that the picture will turn up.
The police did more searches of the gallery just in case someone had dropped it off over the weekend. Now, it isn't like this anymore, but at the time, the art school was actually connected to the NGV. And so what the students did is they made replicas of the paintings and hid them everywhere for the police to find. They wouldn't have found this very difficult, however, because all students had a personal keycard to the gallery. It was also revealed that around the time before the painting was stolen, Mccackey was deliberating upgrading their security. August 11th, 1986. A woman comes forward stating that she saw 3 men at the gallery around the time of the theft. She said they kind of looked at her weirdly for a short period and then left the gallery swiftly. 3 sketches were provided of the suspects, but nothing came of it.
Earlier, police released identikit photographs of 3 people seen acting suspiciously in the gallery shortly after the painting went missing.
And these are the main suspects. They looked directly at her, refused to take their eyes off her, looked quite intently at her, in fact. They didn't say anything amongst themselves.
This is when the third ransom note arrived. However, it was much shorter and sent directly to Race Matthews himself. It read, "Thank you for your support. Phase 2 begins shortly." And within the ransom note was a single burnt match, and the police confirmed the letter to be authentic.
Police have confirmed the letter is authentic, but say the meaning of the term Phase 2 and a burnt match found inside the envelope is a mystery.
August 12th, 1986. The ABC received a tip-off that the stolen painting was in Adelaide. I'm just gonna let this news footage play.
The Great Picasso Caper. It's been going on in Melbourne for 8 traumatic days. But today, dramatically, the focus of the search switched to Adelaide. ABC News has received a tip-off from an anonymous postman that the Picasso's being held at Adelaide's Experimental Art Foundation. In the best tradition of ABC News, we're hot on the trail. Using our usual tactics, we stormed into the building. Yes, this was the place, but we had to take it carefully. The cultural terrorists could have planned an ambush. But no, we were safe, and there it was. I mean, there they were, no fewer than 19 weeping women. Which, if any, were real.
Yes, that is real footage. Welcome to the Australian media. But in the end, it was only 19 replicas and none of them were the authentic one. 5 days later, August 17th, 1986. So Mccackey receives a tip-off from a local art dealer because she says she has suspicions of who did it. So he goes to see her and he reinforces that he only wants the painting back. He does not want to press criminal charges. He only wants the painting. He says that the culprit can either drop it off at Tullamarine Airport, okay, or at Spencer Street Station, which is now Southern Cross Station. August 20th, 1986. Either the night before or the day of, there was conflicting information on this. The aide receives an anonymous phone call stating that the painting has been found in locker 227 at Spencer Street Station. So they ring up the police and they all meet there. And they find the painting neatly wrapped in the locker with no damage. This further contributed to the idea that the thieves were knowledgeable about artwork. They knew how to handle it. Mccackey identified the artwork as authentic on scene, and that was that. He got out the champagne.
Gallery director Patrick Mccackey paced anxiously for the hour it took forensic experts to arrive and remove the parcel. It was examined at their headquarters and authenticated. This morning, the champagne flowed and the weeping woman was revealed undamaged by a jubilant director.
It is going to be bolted to the wall and placed behind glass. If you want to take the painting next time, you will have to take the entire air conditioning duct.
However, the label that was stolen with the painting, I'm assuming it's the little plaque that you get next to the painting that says the artist and the materials and everything, that was never found, and it hasn't been found to this day. Another interesting side note I found was the police described the locker as, quote, too greasy to have any fingerprints. Thanks, Melbourne. But the fourth and final ransom letter was included with the painting. Again, I couldn't find the whole thing, but here are some snippets. "We never looked to have our demands met, and the return completes the first phase of our campaign." At this point, Race Matthews took it upon himself to make the personal point that the money that could have been spent on new art funding had to instead be spent on security.
All Victoria's art treasures are going to remain at risk so long as these people remain at liberty.
August 21st, 1986, the next day. Another witness comes forward stating that they saw 2 women outside the locker that morning. They were holding a brown parcel and seemed to be debating with one another.
Because a train traveller remembers seeing 2 women with a similar brown paper parcel discussing getting a locker at that time. That witness's descriptions have led to this sketch of a woman, aged mid-30s to 40s, about 170 centimetres tall, who was wearing a camel-coloured coat and, according to the witness, was with a shorter woman with similar coloured but longer hair.
Again, a sketch was released, but nothing came of it. And then on January the 11th, 1987, the case was closed. Had no idea who did it, and they didn't see a point in continuing the investigation without any more evidence. And that is the case of the missing weeping woman, now returned. So, I have 3 theories for who could have done it. Number 1 is the local artist. Now, possible theories started to arise at the time that the theft was political and a dig at the government's designation of the arts funding. A vast majority of the funding was going towards things like the library and the museum and the gallery itself, and not towards the local artist who believed they needed it. Furthermore, they also felt it was unfair they were designating the budget to deceased foreign artists instead of living local ones. In 2016, journalist Angus Smith conducted a series of interviews to people related to the crime. First, he interviewed Ashley Crawford, a journalist who was hired to cover the case at the time. He reckons he narrowed it down to a really lovely guy in the arts sector. Though he wouldn't reveal who it was because he thought the suspect would immediately lose his job, Crawford did reveal that the suspect knew how to handle art, so there was never any chance of it being damaged. Smith tried to push him for another clue, but the only thing that Crawford would give up was the pseudonym Deep Throat. I couldn't decipher anything from this, but do with that what you will. Smith also interviewed Gabrielle Williams, not the Dandenong MP, though she seems pretty cool, but the author of The Guy, the Girl, the Artist and His Ex, which is a novel loosely based around the theft. The heist happened when Williams was 23, and she took thorough notes for 10 years before writing the book. She claims to know who did it. Friends of friends, basically. But as I was researching this, I began to realise there was sort of a code of conduct among these people who knew but refused to say. However, she did offer up Smith some extra information. She says that the thieves got stuck in the gallery overnight because the door they came through, the one leading to the art school, was locked. So they stayed overnight, and in the morning they went to Young and Jackson. So for those of you who don't know, Young and Jackson is a very posh pub. You basically just come out of the NGV, go left across the Yarra, and it's right there next to Flinders Street Station. It is also home of a famous painting called Chloe. I don't know much about it, but it's kind of what it's known for. And she said they had beers with the famous Chloe above their head and the famous Picasso painting below their feet. She still refused to give away their identities, but she did offer Smith 2 more clues as to who it was. Firstly, the culprits were worried because their typewriter that they used for the ransom note had a dodgy S key that could possibly be tracked. Secondly, she says that while the first 2 ransom notes were written by the real 2 culprits, the third one may have been written by a pissed off ex-girlfriend, which to me makes sense because it was in a different format to the other ransom notes and sent to a different place. Smith himself actually managed to uncover some names in the art community, but due to defamation laws and this code of conduct that they had, he didn't want to say. So my second theory is the museum's staff. So right now, Mccackey has left his job as director of the NGV and he moved to America and he writes all day and lives with his wife, who owns a restaurant, I think. But in 2016, he did an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald. In it, he stated the following: 1 or 2 people who might have known something about it are now dead. I've always thought there was some likelihood that there was assistance in the theft. I think they knew how to use a register's card so it wasn't missed. Apparently, police also investigated a staff love triangle that I could find little to no information on. Apparently, this person's former partner sent them a pretty out there letter, a lot of sexual innuendos and personal accusations, saying this person could have stolen the Picasso. So Nick Holland, who was the guy that actually retrieved the painting from the locker, he reckons that the letters could be from the same source as the ransom note. He thinks that DNA evidence could prove it, but it's just not a high enough priority to get it tested. This almost seems too good to be true to me, and because I couldn't find much information on it, I'm a bit skeptical, but do with that what you will. And Smith also interviewed a security guard who was working there at the time called George Peker. He claimed that no member of staff was questioned by police. Pretty dodgy if you ask me. But it got me thinking, if the theft was an homage to when they stole the Mona Lisa, maybe there was some clues hiding there. So this guy called Perugia, don't know if I'm saying that right, I'm sorry, he stole the Mona Lisa by walking through the employee's entrance dressed in the white smocks the employees wore. He hid the Mona Lisa in the white smock and then left through the normal customer entrance. But something that really stuck out to me is that Perugia was an ex-employee at the Louvre. If this was an homage to the theft of the Mona Lisa, could that mean that the person that stole the Weeping Woman worked at the gallery? I don't know, to me the connection to the Mona Lisa theft was a bit, I don't know much about art, I don't know much about art history, but it felt like they were kind of pulling at straws. The only similarity the 2 thefts really had was that someone went into a gallery and took off a painting and walked out with it. So my final theory is my favourite theory. So I just spoke about George Peker, who Smith interviewed as well. He's a special constable and he worked for security at the NGV at the time. So he didn't work the evening shift when it was stolen, but he did work that day and said he saw it there perfectly normal. But when he came in the next day and asked the colleagues why they didn't see anything amiss, they said, "Keep your mouth shut, we all sleep." This shouldn't have been surprising to Peker because on his first day he was told to bring a blanket and a pillow. Recall that the art school is connected to the museum and students had access to the museum through a door. They had personal key cards apparently, but the art school also had keys when this door was locked. Peker claims that there was a band rehearsal happening on the night the painting was stolen. Get this, the frame of the painting was found on the cabinet next to where they kept their instrument cases. I'm calling it now, guys. I think it was stolen by a band kid. Think about it, the painting's probably like this. This could fit in a tuba case. This could fit in my bass case. There's not too much evidence for this, but I think it's a funny theory, and that's why it's my favourite. As for my personal belief, I think it was very political indeed. I truly believe that the thieves had no intention of harming the painting because they would have done so. I think, like a lot of people, that they stole it, panicked and just gave it back. I do think it was maybe a local artist, maybe a student at the school, but it's very possible they had inside help. Someone said, I can't remember, it might have been Mccackey, but someone definitely said that it's possible museum staff could have done it because they wanted to embarrass the NGV. I think, like Perugia in the Louvre, They either had to work there at the time or have had to have worked there at some point to know about the screwdrivers. Also, we know that they have ties to the artist community, according to the people that have supposedly found them. But even outside of that, the chick that Mccackey was talking to, she was in the art community and probably passed it on. But regardless of all this, I think I'm quite at peace with not knowing. I think it really adds to Melbourne's culture. It's sort of become an urban legend in and of itself. And as Mccackey said, the face really did haunt Melbourne for the next 100 years. Or the next 30 years. It might be irrelevant in 60 years, but that's fine. And with that, I shall leave you with a quote by Thomas Dixon, who was the chief conservator at the museum at the time. He says, "Everyone knows, but nobody can agree." Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I really appreciated all the lovely comments on the video where I suggested I do something like this. I so enjoyed this. It's exactly what I want to be doing. I loved it so much, and I hope you did as well. I want to know your theories. Let me know downstairs. Also, I'm still reading my educational article every time I upload a video. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed myself and I hope you did as well. Bye!